Good morning, everyone. My name is Chrissy Rollletter, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar, How Artificial Intelligence Will and Won't Change Procurement and Contracting, Separating Fact from Fiction to Understand the Practical Impact of AI. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few things so you know how to participate in today's event. The screenshot shows an example of an attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your computer desktop in the upper right corner. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer system by default. If you prefer to join over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect them and address them during the Q&A session at the end. We will also be recording this presentation and will provide it to all of you. So before we dive into the details, here's a quick look at the agenda for the next 60 minutes. I'll share a little bit about Determine, introduce the speakers, and then you'll hear from Andrew Bartel and Julian Nadeau. Determine is a leading global source-to-pay and contract management provider. We serve more than 250 global customers spanning a wide spectrum of industries, including financial services, insurance, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, retail, transportation, and manufacturing. In a global economic climate of uncertainty and instability, organizational flexibility and agility remain paramount. Customers are looking for innovative technology, tools, thinking, and expertise that can help them streamline processes to drive operational efficiency, align functions, and leverage the enormous untapped value of their organizational data. Customers use our solutions to discover previously unseen supplier, contractual, and spend data to maximize savings, drive new revenue, control costs, improve workflow efficiencies, mitigate risk, and make more informed and smarter business decisions. So joining us today are two esteemed gentlemen in our technology space. From Forrester is Andrew Bartels, Vice President and Principal Analyst at Forrester Research. As an analyst, Mr. Bartels is a leading expert on tech market trends, cloud and smart technologies, tech's impact on business operations, and more. And also from Determine is Julian Nadeau, Chief Product Officer at Determine. Mr. Nadeau is a global specialist in e-procurement and spend management, whose leadership has made the Determine Cloud platform a leading source-to-pay presence in the industry. So thank you, gentlemen, and I'd like to turn it over to Andrew.
Thank you very much. So, is artificial intelligence in business a myth? So everyone's talking about, Julian.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, Sir Julian. Yeah, everybody talks about, but nobody really knows how to do it right.
And everyone thinks everyone else is doing it.
So everyone claims they are doing it, right?
Exactly. So what we're going to try to do in this call is help figure out myth from reality. So moving right ahead, I'm going to start to the heart of the question. So what is artificial intelligence? Like a lot of other firms, we at Forrester have done a fair amount of thinking and research and diagnosis and description about it. And I think the thing to remember is that AI technologies are designed to try and mimic humans' ability to sense, think, and act. In a sense, artificial intelligence are a substitute for real intelligence. But they're not one thing. They're a collection of different technologies that play different types of roles. So you have sensing AI, which involves things like image analysis and biometrics and speech recognition and text analytics. You've got thinking AI, which is machine learning and deep learning platforms and semantic analysis. And you have acting AI, like natural language generation, decision making, and they all come together, at least in some cases, in various then combinations of systems that sense, think, and act, like robotic process automation or virtual agents. So just like human intelligence, it's not one thing. Artificial intelligence is a collection of different things. Now, what makes AI both tricky and valuable is the fact that you can link these different components to build more complex AI systems that can turn sensing into action. And that's sort of the value of AI is to not replace people, but to add value to what people do. Now, like real intelligence, AI systems need to be trained. And like real intelligence, it uses iteration and feedback to get better. In many ways, you can think of AI as a progression that may start with the AI equivalent of kindergarten, work up through elementary school, work up through high school, work up through college, probably not yet to graduate school, but there is that similar training process that goes on. And there is, of course, a real question as to whether or not AI systems are going to take over the world. My own view, and I think my view of many of my Forrester colleagues, is that AI systems, both today and most likely in the future, will work best as complements for humans, not as replacements. Because AI is the collection of different technologies, each of those technologies are at different points of maturity and different points of potential. So among the cluster of technologies, AI technologies we track, several of them, like decision management, text analytics, natural language processing, are relatively mature. Other ones, like machine learning platforms and robotic process automation, are becoming more mature. And still others, like deep learning platforms, swarm intelligence, natural language generation, are still at a very immature level. They're not really at a point of being deployed, but they will start to come to the fore. Now, when you are presented as a potential client with claims about vendors and their AI tools, there are a couple of things you need to remember. One is AI is, first of all, a set of algorithms. So you want to understand, are these algorithms organic functions that are built into the application, or are they bolt-ons that ride beside the application? A bolt-on might be, for example, a natural language generation system that's used to communicate with customers. Organic would be more machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing. Where do they come from? Who built them? Who was the source of these? Did they come from the vendor itself? Did they come from some of the emerging AI platform vendors? There are pros and cons of both. You understand where the algorithms come from. How mature are they? I used the analogy earlier of human learning. So are these algorithms the equivalent of being in kindergarten? Or the equivalent of being in elementary school, high school, college? How long it's been around? How well it's been trained? Just like human intelligence can be general or can be specific. So you want to understand, are these algorithms designed specifically for relevant tasks and problems that you're facing? Just as you would not expect someone who graduates with a high school degree to be particularly expert in solving engineering problems, you'd want to make sure that your AI tool is designed to solve engineering problems, not just have a general education. And how do they get trained? What's the process that the vendor uses to train them, to make them smarter, to move them from the equivalent of elementary school to high school to college? The other part of AI is the data sets. Similar to algorithms, you have to question, where does the data come from? And is that data source relevant to our needs, to the situations we're facing, the problems we're facing? Similar to algorithms, how big and tenured are they? Are they robust? Have they been proven and tested? And are they reliable? Have they been tested and improved over time to get better? So these are some of the factors that you're looking at AI, you want to think about as to whether or not the tools that the vendor's offering are credible or not.
Yeah, and Drew, I can maybe add to that,
sure.
That on the data, actually, you have to make sure that you have pretty new and clean data as well. I mean, the data quality is critical. And also, when you look at the data set, making sure that you have the labels, I mean, to make sense of it. If you cannot make sense of the data, the outcome is going to be not very good. And the other thing as well is you're going to get errors. I mean, the AI is not like a true or false. It's really about the statistics. So can you afford allowance of error? That's pretty critical, depending on the use case.
Yes. And certainly, as you look at data sets, you want to really query the vendor as to how many clients they have, whose data they have in their analysis. And are they in your industry as a way of testing to see whether they're relevant and whether they're robust? Now, where does AI fit within what we define as the e-purchasing process? Now, the e-purchasing process is a set of products that support all of the stages in how companies source, contract, manage, spend, and invoice with their suppliers. So that cycle conceptually starts with spend analysis. And spend analysis has traditionally been a big area of AI, even before it's called AI. Supplier risk and performance management. Who are our suppliers? How are they doing? What risks are they presenting us with, or are they themselves subject to? What are the risks in the supply chain? Again, another area you're seeing AI crop up. Sourcing. Running a sourcing event to choose your suppliers. AI is cropping up in that area. Contract lifecycle management, turning a sourcing event into a contract. How do you do that? How do you track and manage that contract? The actual procurement that may occur, ideally against the contracts you have, but of course including items that may not be under contract, and find the best price there. Order fulfillment is obviously important in goods, but it's critically important in services. And so utilizing AI to manage and determine, did we actually get the value that we paid for in that consulting project or from the contractor? And then invoicing, processing, and presentment, turning that invoice and validating it and make sure it matches against the PO, the invoice, the contract receipt, which then becomes the source of the spend data that you do, and the cycle repeats itself. So AI is popping up in each of these areas to greater or lesser degrees. I showed earlier a long list of AI technologies. And there are several of these that are, in fact, most important or most relevant to the sourcing, procurement, and contracting processes that make up the e-purchasing market. This is decision management AI, or tools that help people make better sourcing, purchasing, contracting decisions through the use of expert systems that can guide users to choose the right sourcing templates, to decide who is the right supplier to purchase against, to determine what's the right contract that we should be following here, and to determine what's the right contract terms we should be using. Text analytics and natural language processing are being used to capture information from requirements documents, from past RFPs or RFQs or RFIs, from existing contracts for vendor responses, to be able to take that data, that information that's coming in from those, and make them accessible and understandable. Machine learning platforms and semantic analysis are being used to categorize and sort the information that you're collecting from those documents, sort them in taxonomies, into metadata categories, or into appropriate process steps along the way. And robotic process automation is playing a role in helping to improve the handling of repeated standardized steps in the procurement, sourcing, contracting, or vendor management process, to more effectively take what has been around a while, workflow in business process management, and allow certain decisions that in the past had to be routed to a person for decision, to now have sufficient knowledge based upon past practice to make a decision and reduce the number of times that you have to call out to a person to say, hey, what do we do in this scenario, in this situation, in this case? So all of these are relevant to the various process, but some are going to be more relevant than others, and we'll look at that in a minute. Now, we at Forrester decided it would be interesting to do an analysis of what various purchasing and CLM vendors, contract lifecycle management vendors, are doing in the way of AI. So we did a survey. We sent it out. We got a response from about 23, almost 24 vendors. And not surprising, the most common AI tools they're using are machine learning platforms. Then you find semantic analysis. Then you find text analytics and natural language processing. Intelligent recommendation solutions, AI-enhanced analytic solutions, decision management, robotic process automation. These are all the top ones. You find much lower use for things like speech recognition, facial recognition, image, video analysis, which quite frankly play a relatively modest role in procurement. They may be much more important in, let's say, sell-side systems where you have to engage directly with customers. So this gives you a sense as to where vendors are focusing their investment. As I said, in those AI tools that can help us some of the tasks that we've identified already in that sourcing process, in the contracting process, in the procurement process, in the vendor management process.
Maybe you can comment a little bit this one.
Sure.
Because it's a lot of different technology, but in fact, what we call machine learning is is at the core, obviously, but deep learning, for example, is machine learning as well, to make sure. So deep learning is kind of the new generation of machine learning, so it's part of machine learning. It's pretty immature, but still, it's same thing. And when you look at whatever facial recognition, these kind of things, it's using deep learning as well. So there is a lot of dependencies from this different technology. The only difference is, as a procurement or contract provider, we use the core platform to be able to, to manage our use case, and not necessarily using things that have been used for social media or these kind of things.
Mm-hmm. So one of the other questions we asked is, what do you as the vendor think the value proposition of clients is going to be from your adoption of AI? And picking up a point that I made earlier about where AI is going to be used, it's interesting that the highest value proposition lies in better decisions, enabling employees to increase the probability of good business outcomes and reduce the probability of bad business outcomes. The second highest is around productivity savings, enabling employees to be more efficient. Cost savings do crop up, and clearly that's a factor the companies are looking at, but it's interesting, it's not as high as the decision improvement to productivity. And another interesting point is that while some vendors are talking about new offerings or allowing clients to offer new offerings, it's relatively small in terms of comparing of the other value propositions that vendors are bringing, utilizing their AI-enhanced solutions. Lastly, for this purpose, we also asked them, how do you plan to offer your AI-enhanced solutions? And far and away, the largest percentage of them say that they will offer them as enhancements to existing products, although in some cases they're hoping to do so as new or premium products. A smaller number say that they are going to add these to their products with no additional charge. And there still are some optimists out there that think they can actually do this as premium products with additional charges compared to standard products. But quite frankly, as I look at the landscape here and see how much vendors are doing this, I think that clients can really expect they're going to get AI at little or no premium. It's going to be baked into the offerings that they have. Vendors may be able to charge premiums for a while, but it's not going to be sustainable given the competitive pressure. So let's now look at some of the stages of the purchasing cycle and identify where we think AI is going to play a role. So in e-sourcing, this is the stage of generating the RFP, the RFQ, the RFI. So we are seeing natural language processing and machine learning being used to assemble a draft of the appropriate RFX based upon a query, based upon an interview with the user as to what they want to accomplish. And then expert systems that will then be able to advise on that content based upon what's been done in similar sourcing scenarios. To present to that requisitioner, or that, in this case, the person initiating a sourcing event, okay, here's what we have recommend you include for this particular one based upon sourcing we've done in 16 similar cases. One of the key issues that exists in any sourcing event is your interaction with suppliers. They have questions. They want to get clarification. So we're using machine learning to interpret and natural language generation to answer those simple queries from suppliers without having to route that to a person to do. Another key step in it is the scoring and receiving of vendor responses. Vendor responses should come in ideally in a single format. In practice, they don't. In practice, they may line up in different ways. Traditionally, one of the tasks that any sourcing event has gone through is to get different employees to score that. Well, using natural language processing, machine learning, you can start to take the vendor responses, match them against your selection criteria, and then use expert systems in complement with your own scoring to determine what are the best responses. And then another area is conducting reverse auctions and using robotic process automation to manage those reverse auctions to set in place the rules that will quickly decide, okay, when do we change the timing of that? What do we want to, how do we want to respond to what we're seeing as the bids? And especially if you're doing multi-vendor awards, using expert systems to determine what's the best combination of bids that we want to use, and making a final award that may go out to 2, 3, 4 different vendors. In contract management, one of the early stages of any contract management solution is getting the contracts into the repository. Natural language processing, machine learning, will be able to extract and categorize the metadata in those contracts and bring that in with a much more efficient, much faster way, whether that's a legacy contract, whether that's a third-party contract you want to pull into your system. Reporting and analysis using advanced analytics to measure actual performance against expected results to determine where are we getting the savings we thought we'd get, or where are we living up to our sell-side commitments on this. Contract creation, using artificial intelligence to help users choose the right contract terms and conditions for a new contract. So especially important when you have users who may not have used the product for 6 months, but now have to create a contract. The guide that will tell them what they should do makes that adoption much easier. Contract compliance, in addition to integrating CLM into transaction systems that need the contract data, like your procurement system or your invoice system, workflows and AI to facilitate completion of obligations and to track the current status to make sure that what's supposed to be done is done, and that you're getting the contract results you expect to. And then ultimately, in the form of contract optimizations, advanced analytics that can look at your total portfolio of contracts and look at your business results and identify risks or lost value from your existing contracts, and use those to identify the changes in contract language that will give you better results in the future. Spend analysis was AI before AI became popular, using a combination of rules engines and neural networks. So what we're seeing in AI in spend and analytics is basically just moving to the next generation. Natural language processing, machine learning to classify PO and invoice data into product opportunities and appropriate vendor categories. Again, a step improvement, not a radical improvement, but certainly making it better and easier. Opportunity analysis, sifting through all that classified spend data to identify better sourcing opportunities than can be done just by people alone, and feeding those opportunities to people for determining which is the best opportunity we ought to be pursuing now versus in 3 months, which ones maybe we should do a split bid on. And compliance analysis, linking it back to the contract and then going unit by unit or category by category to identifying spend that is not going with your preferred vendors, and why that's happening. What's the cause of that? So to wrap up with some key recommendations here, and Julie, I think, will talk a little bit about some other process steps where AI is playing a role. But before I hand over to Julie, I just want to make a couple of key points. One, just to repeat, AI is always going to be a mixture of mature and immature technologies. So you want to really spend a lot of time understanding what is the training that's already gone into these systems, and also be prepared to make your own training. Whatever AI system that you receive is going to require some degree of training for your own business, your own environment. Hopefully not a lot, but it's still going to be a case that just as you bring a new employee, you may have training you have to do for them on your procedures and processes. Any AI system that you bring in is going to have also the same degree of training on your own process, your own procedures. You want to be aware of hype and what we call AI washing, people just slapping on AI without really fundamentally changing how they're doing things. We think that AI is going to play a major role in purchasing, but we think it's going to be mostly as a complement to humans, not as a replacement for them. We think that AI will make analytically intensive apps like spend analysis and supplier risk and performance management easier to set up, easier to use, and more valuable. We think it's going to creep into other apps through natural language processing, robotic process automation, expert system decisions. But at the end of the day, we think AI's greatest contribution will be more effective sourcing, contracting, and management of services as opposed to management of goods, because services add a level of complexity that are not well handled by today's generation of technologies. But with the new AI, will have a much better job of helping you manage the purchase of contracting services, statement of work services, consulting services, outsourcing services, than the current generation technologies, which are generally not too good for that. So Julian, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. So actually, I'm going to try to explain some use case. But before that, I mean, Andrew, you explained very well the different technologies and so on. I'm going to show some use case, and out of this use case, actually, it's always the same principles. So I'm not going to go over this principle all the time. The thing is, to work well, more data we have, better it is. So that means that when we have the learning process, and if we have data history and years of data history, and we have at the same time the bad data or the source and the correct answers, it makes things much, much easier. So that means that a company like Determine, for example, we have 15 or 20 years of history and data, a lot of data. That means that we can train a machine to learn things without you having to train yourself the machine. So there is a lot of meat and a lot of value out of the data that has been collected before. At the same time, when we apply the AI into any process, we use this trained machine to bring immediate value. But at the same time, we propose an answer, whatever, but you have all the time the capability to correct the answer. So that means that we deliver a prediction and statistics saying, okay, it's maybe a 90% or 80% chance that it's the right answer. And you always have the capability to correct it. And once we correct it, we train back the machine. So that means that it's a continuous improvement process, which is very, very useful. In terms of what we do at Determine, it's just a different angle of what Andrew talked about. Everything started with classification, and it came mainly all the use case in the spend analytics, and that's in our space, actually. So in spend analysis, classification has been at the core of all the use case. There is a lot of things to reduce human costs, perform classification, so it's really very, very interesting. A lot of use case. I'm going to just give some example. A recommendation is really what has been brought by a company like Amazon, especially on the e-commerce. So it has been very popular by all the use of this deep learning, actually, to be able to find patterns and bring recommendation to users. So it came really from the e-commerce, and that's really the next technology that is today available on this platform. And it's very useful for task automation to optimize decision, to share knowledge, these kind of things. The prediction is more like we have a lot of data and we want to predict what's going to happen, or we want to optimize scenario, or if I purchase this, actually, what is the outcome, what is the risk, what will be the risk, blah, blah, blah. It's really to anticipate, make better decision, increase saving. It's much, much more complex to do than recommendation and classification. So it's still pre and mature. I'll try to give you a quick view about what we can do with this prediction. But it's still kind of a pure R&D stuff. And the last one is a pretty hot topic. Everybody knows about conversation, especially when you look at Alexa or Google Assistant or Siri. It's really something everybody is talking about, how to interact with the machine using our language, how to get the result in natural language, and etc., and how to remove this UI, which is a mouse, a keyboard, and these kind of things. So that's kind of, I would say, the next topic that we are working on. If I'm now looking at some use case, so again, I'm going to show some use case that we work on. It's not all of them, so there are many use cases. I just picked a few of them. The first one is the very, very classic one, spend classification, supplier identification. The way it works, actually, is you give the machine the data, which is like names, address for the suppliers, and you give whatever information you have on the span. You can have labels, GL accounts, any information that you can get. And the thing is, you try to combine a lot of different technology together to be able to find the best classification. The way the classification used to be done, it was pretty basic machine learning up to now. But thanks to what's coming out with the deep learning, actually, it makes things much easier to do, actually cheaper as well. And we get better classification and less manual work. So the use of deep learning now on the span classification will allow all the span analysis to do a much better job than what we used to have. So it's really a great improvement over what you have actually on the market.
Just to make a comment on that, Julian, one of the weaknesses I've seen in spend analysis has been that they work relatively well and where you have part numbers, SKU numbers, as Julian shows here. They struggle a lot more when the data is related to services and you have text-based descriptions that describe what the nature of the engagement was. A consulting project, a security assessment, things of that kind. And one of the areas that machine learning is helping is being able to do that interpretation of what the words are in that invoice and turn that into a classification. So I think you're going to see the biggest improvement in spend analysis in the services classification. There will be improvements in the goods, but most dramatic is going to be in the services side.
Yeah, and actually you can go much further. I mean, it's not at the end. Like if you think about being able to go deeper into each product item category and find similar items and classify deeply into the detailed category, I mean, we have a long way ahead of us to improve the accuracy and the detailed information we can get. Another area which is quite interesting, it's I put that on the supplier risk management. So you will see that it's completely different model. Basically, in this case, you crawl public information that you can find on internet. So you use the computer to look for PR, whatever database you have on internet or social media or website, and you kind of analyze all the content, whatever language you get, and using what we call the sentiment analysis, which is a subset of the deep learning, so it's based on neural networks, you can find if it's positive, negative, if it's risky, not risky, if it's tied to this category or not. And basically, it can feed supplier information and not only give you information about the source, but also classify and filter the different sources to trigger any alerts or any risk you can find on internet. At the same time, if you tie that to global information you can get, not only on specific supplier, but for example, in this case, information about geological risk or natural risk in different regions, and you attach that to geolocalization that you get from the supplier, you can map general information, general risk information, or it can be political decision in different countries, for example, on aluminum and steel. I don't know why I'm saying that. And you can actually map all this information together to give even bigger information about the impact of this risk on your supplier panel, actually. So it's something which is still at the very beginning, but a lot of potential in the near future. I'm going to switch to contract. So that's something that has been there for years. When we, for example, implement a customer, a CLM, for example, and they want to load all their contracts, the deal is how do you get all the metadata, all the information from the contract into the system so you can search, filter, attach the contract to the third party, have termination date, whatever. It's very important. So we have been using for years tools to be able to extract data and metadata from contracts. And the way it works is usually kind of machine learning. When we look at the new technology available today on the market, especially with better natural language processing and kind of the deep learning, we can see that we can get better results also because we are able not only to extract the metadata, but we are also able to get the provision, the obligation in the clause of the contract. So that means that we can put a meaning on a paragraph to trigger an obligation, attach the metadata to this obligation, and at the end, you have all the contract information as data in your system and not anymore as a text in a document. So that's very, very powerful. And that's something which is pretty interesting in terms of contract management. So, I mean, beware that it's going to improve a lot in this area in the coming months. Another use case on a contract. So it's something where Determine is not doing itself. It's really a company specialized in that. And actually, a university did a study on comparing, reviewing contract legal documents by the machine against different lawyers from different companies. And what they found out is pretty useful. First, using the deep learning, sentiment analysis, natural language processing, they were able to find all the issues on all these contracts. The thing is, the machine did a much better job. So in fact, the machine achieved 95% of accuracy on the issue on the contract, and the lawyer 85%. So the machine did a better job, but in only 20 seconds instead of 92 minutes to read the contract. So that tells you that this technology allows not only to do a better job, but a much cheaper job than having human reading things in a more consistent way. And as Andrew said, it's not about replacing lawyer. I mean, reading a contract and trying to find an issue is not really the value of a lawyer. But if a lawyer can get all the information pre-processed and a list of every single issue that you may have on a contract or inconsistency or whatever, then the lawyer can concentrate on the value, meaning how do I solve this issue? What do I propose? Do I have a fallback? And so it makes actually the value of the lawyer much better to use this type of tool. A different use case now on recommendation. So that was for mainly classification use case. So classification, again, it's a mix of natural language for unstructured data and direct deep learning or machine learning, whatever. The product recommender is something, again, the typical use case is what you get when you go to any e-commerce tool to buy something. Usually you buy something and the system proposes you a lot of items that are related to what you buy. So what we did in terms of procurement system is we say, okay, let's use the same technology to suggest products that has been used by other users in the system based on your cart. So if I fill my cart with this, whatever, the system is going to propose me directly the related items. We used to have this functionality in the system for 15 years. The difference is the catalog manager had to administer the catalog and to say, oh, by the way, I'm going to link this cartridge to this printer. So when the user is purchasing this printer or this cartridge, for example, you have all the related cartridge or printer or whatever. Nobody was being able to do that because it was too time consuming just to parameterize the system. So just the fact that you can replace the configuration of the system by deep learning, actually being able to automatically build the relationship between the items based on the use of the system, made this recommendation very useful. So it's all about time saving instead of complex configuration, making things much, much easier for the user and for the administrator. I put it the second one because a product recommender can be something else. And basically when you tweak a little bit more the machine learning, you can find kind of more interesting use case. So in this case, instead of saying, based on what the user have bought, I'm going to, to display the related item, you can find patterns in the purchasing history, and you can actually recommend products not only on the link between the product, but on the fact that there is a pretty high probability that you're going to buy this product pretty soon. So I took this example of a printer, for example, again, just to be consistent. And I know that I'm going to buy cartridge, for example. And let's say that I change the cartridge every 6 months, whatever. The system is going to detect automatically that the cartridge is kind of a purchase every 6 months, and will automatically actually prepare a cart. We call that a preset kit. With the items, so it makes again the life of the user much easier because they don't have to go and say, oh, I need to buy some cartridge or blah blah blah. I mean, the cart is there, and once they need it, they can use it. Just much easier for the user. Another use case which is pretty interesting. So that's kind of pretty new actually on the market. Not many providers are doing that. It's about sourcing recommendation. So the way it works is think of an RFP where you have a specification requirements. And what you said, Andrew, about the services procurement is pretty true here. Let's say that I need to find a supplier to address this requirement. This requirement is typically, a piece of text saying, oh, I need this, I need that, I need this provider to do this, to do that. How do you find a supplier being able to address the need? If it's, again, a good and you have a reference, it's pretty easy. If it's a service, it becomes very, very difficult. So the way we can solve that with machine learning is actually crawl a lot of information from the web, like activity, online catalog, website, PR, social network, to understand what the supplier do in detail. At the same time, once you enter your requirements, the system is going to analyze the semantic of the requirements, and it's going to match and to find which supplier in this region is going to be able to address your needs. So it's just a list of recommendations, and the system will give you whatever number of supplier, and then you can either pick one of them or several, add the one you want. But it's very, very helpful if you want to source something and you don't specifically know which supplier is going to be able to provide your services. The next one is a use case actually that we've been working for several years, and that's one of the most difficult and technical use case. It's about pricing prescription. What we want to do is basically we have list of items and the price of an item is based on many things. So you have raw material, you have currency exchange, blah, blah, blah. And you have a lot of information that affect the price of an item. At the same time, we collect the history of all these price. And what we do is we put that into a deep learning, and the goal is kind of predicting the price of the item, okay? At the same time, if we put that into a recommendation into the e-procurement process, we can, based on the supplier, make a lot of saving in the PO by choosing the right product at the right time. So I'm going to show you that as an example, how it looks like on the e-procurement product. So let's say that I'm a company, I'm an auto repair company, and actually what I'm doing is I'm purchasing a lot of goods, a lot of goods. So the thing is, how can we predict information to generate value? So in my company, the first thing I need to do is to look at what I buy, what I purchase, what is my spend. And for that, I looked at all my different items per volume, per quantity, and I can identify here which are my strategic items. And these strategic items is typically some items where I know that I can follow some price. I have multiple suppliers, so it works very well on the actually on goods. So let's say that I need to buy a bunch of tire, a lot of tire. I select the one which is on my negotiated price in my catalog. I use just purchase requisition, and I create my PR, right? The only thing is you can see that I have a recommendation optimization button. And when I click on that, I can see actually the different price that has been collected in different supplier for this specific item. So I can really see what's going on with these different purchaser. But what's interesting on the right is the system shows on the right actually the prediction of the price for the future days and weeks. So not only I can see the best price, but I can see if the price is going up or going down. So the system actually recommends me a new supplier. And if I select the new supplier, I can see that I'm going to make a lot of saving. And I can even measure the saving by changing the supplier. And again, not only recommending the supplier based on the collected price, but also based on the prediction can be pretty powerful. So on a platform like the source-to-pay platform, we can also different types of predictive. We have a value dashboard with a global saving, which is the sum of all the saving that has been made thanks to the platform. If I click on that, what you can see here is not only you can measure the saving that you have made, but you can see in green the saving which is predicted for the fiscal year 2019. So that means that the system is able not only to predict price, but also predict and I mean the forecast of spend, of saving, of anything. So that's pretty powerful. Example of a conversation. So let's say that you are a purchaser into a procurement tool, and you say, you know, you have whatever, it's a mobile phone, you have Skype, you have Google Home or whatever. And you can say, hey, I determine, I'd like to create a purchase request. So the system is going to answer, hi, John, tell me what item you want to add. Oh, I want to buy the Grundfos pump reference 59, blah, blah. Sure, this system item is in the catalog and has been added. Do you want it to be shipped at your usual location? This is perfect. Please send me a text when confirmed. What you can see in this conversation, actually, is the system is not only allowing you to interact with the system, with the platform, but it's really bringing some value. Like, you know, you have the address which is pre-configured, and the system actually just help you doing the right thing, right? So it's way easier to interact with the system. So what can do a conversational agent? A conversational agent can help user doing procurement. So basically, you can query information about current document and processes. So you can know, for example, where your purchase request, PO to approve, whatever you have to do. At the same time, when you search an item from catalog to initiate purchase request, you can use FAQ and help on the use of the platform. That's pretty interesting. So if you tie actually the conversation with a machine learning and a knowledge base, each time you ask a question and you get an answer, the system is going to learn and will give better and better answer. So it gets smarter over time. So that means that by automating the training and what we call observational learning, the system constantly improves performance. And that's pretty interesting, not only to help user doing their job, but also to collect the knowledge of the use of the platform and support the user in real time. We are doing that actually with one customer, so it's kind of pretty pretty new technology that's kind of available, but it's pretty interesting. So now, if I go back, I'm just going to wrap up all these use case. And typically, the main benefit of the artificial intelligence and what we have learned from this use case. First, using AI means better accuracy. I mean, we have consistent analysis. We cover 100% of data compared to human. We have continuous improvement using massive amount of data and very detailed results. That's a fact. And using this new deep learning helps. It's much faster, meaning that once we ingest data on the platform, we can do real-time processing. And we can also even feed robotic process automation to go even faster in terms of process. At the same time, as Andrew said, we augment human capability, meaning that we empower business users. We give them the right information. We assist also occasional users. They don't specifically know and are not experts about how to do purchasing. We can help them. And basically, the way to help them is to learn and share expertise. So, for example, if someone has been doing something for years and someone is new, he will be assisted by the information that has been collected by the expert. And we can identify a lot of new saving. We can process years of data using the predictive model. We can do a lot of optimization and recommendation. So actually, a lot of benefit from AI. It's not going to replace the people, but it's going to help and to bring a lot of value. I think that's about it.
Okay. Thank you, Julian, for that. In the remaining time we have, I'd like to field just a few questions that we're getting from our audience to the panelists. So first one is, do you see new vendors coming into the AI procurement space, or will the market go to an existing suite players?
Let me take this, and I obviously have the broader perspective. I do not expect we'll see a lot of new entrants. There may be a few, but what I'm seeing certainly is pretty much all of the existing vendors in the market are to greater or lesser degree embracing, utilizing, bringing AI into their products. That means there probably will be reduced opportunities for a new entrant. And of course, the existing players come with some key assets. They already know have a lot of the data that's needed for AI. They know the types of problems that need to be addressed through AI. So while I certainly can't rule out new vendors, I think the odds definitely favor those who are already in the space, precisely because they have been so quick, like Determinant has been, to utilize AI and bring it into the product portfolio.
Yeah, I may add to that I mean, for us, we have a platform, so we cannot do everything. We cannot be good at everything. And all the use case of AI, we cannot address them. And by the way, on the use case I presented, some of them are made by partners or technology partners. And the way we see it is, I mean, we develop our own technology, but at the same time, on the platform, we can onboard apps or third-party technology that we integrate into our process. So it's a combination of both.
Okay, awesome. Second question, what is the difference or similarities between RPA and AI?
RPA we view as a subset of AI. It's essentially incorporating within what traditionally is called business process management, AI components that involve, as I mentioned, natural language processing to interpret a step in that process and determine what it means, and then to apply rules and not rules, but decisions to make a determination as to what should be done if a person were to do that based upon past experience, learn how to do it automatically. So AI, in effect, feeds RPA, and RPA itself is a subset of the portfolio of technology that make up AI.
Yeah, and to make a long story short, I mean, the outcome of AI can be either a human decision, so we bring the information on the screen and someone is making a decision out of it, or we automate the decision and we move on and we make the process much better and we can combine different technology together. and that's where RPA brings a lot of value.
Awesome. So let's wrap up. Thank you, Andrew and Julian. I also want to thank everyone who attended and for all your great questions. We will get to those. You'll see 2 emails here on the screen to contact either Andrew or Julian, and we will also forward everyone the recording of the webinar as soon as it's ready. So thanks again, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.